afternoon. It is Thursday, no,
Wednesday.
Wednesday, December 22nd. And this is the work session of the Board of Supervisors for the American Rescue Plan Act. Let's start with some updates from the previous meeting. I'll turn to Supervisor Murphy because I know you just said you had some updates.
I do. Yes, I do. I talked to the conservation director regarding where we were on the contract or the documents with the Iowa utilities, the rural utilities for Hickory. And he said he'd contact you a couple weeks earlier. I said, call him again. Tell him the county supervisors have been hounding you, basically asking about it, and see what you can get. End of this month is the answer he got. I've seen the co-mayor and I told him that we should have something from the utilities by the end of the month, and that hopefully Mike and I can be over there sometime in January and we can see how it's going. So we may be able to move this one forward.
Okay.
I don't know what that means for a total timeline, but that was the next step. That's the thing that's been holding it up. And I was glad that Mike was willing to call him back and being a little harder on him. So not a guarantee, but that's what they said. So that's one thing. The other thing is I had a phone call this morning with Keith Jansen from Center for Rural Affairs and Sarah Carmichael, our Watershed coordinator, about the $100 million in federal money on water infrastructure. And I've also looked at, Kate's been looking at that and sent some materials, and I also got on the Iowa Finance Authority website. Some of this I don't understand, but let me tell you what I think I know about it. There's watershed protection projects. There's total allocation of $5 million, the maximum award is up to $500,000. So if that could be like as few as 10 applications. The kicker on this is there's not an application deadline. It's a rolling application. And in other words, as soon as they get them, they'll, hey, if I like this, here's money. You know, when the money's gone, it's gone. They're going to be very hard to apply for. Sarah had been talking with Polk County and their watershed coordinator about our edge of field practices. And we have that in here for $40,000. But Jonathan from Polk County, they're going to talk next week about potentially having a story in Polk County and City of Ames application, because these edge field practices could span all three of those counties. The ones we were looking at would be, you know, Story and City of Ames involved. So we might want to consider holding off a little bit on that $40,000, because if she already knew that there was a conservation commission, the conservation board meeting, I think it's the 10th, and then our board meeting on the 11th. They would have to bring it to us to submit, but they could submit by January 11th. Who knows if that'll be too late or not. I mean, you've got to figure that everybody who's going for this money has to go through some process, getting some governing board or boards to approve it. So maybe it won't be. But Sarah was going to get in touch with Mike, and they were going to talk about whether that would work. That's a small amount of money, but it would be some money that we could get through some other ARPA funds that could, you know, and I know we just said we'd take that $40,000, you know, at least consider that next week, but we might want to think about the fact that we might be able to get some IFA money there. The other one is a trickier, so that's only $5 million of the 100. There's another $40 million, maximum award up to 15, economically significant projects. Promoting tourists, serve a large portion of the state by population and geography with the added benefit of promoting tourism and or supporting economic development. I kind of thought about Hickory there, but I think that would be a big lift on this. You read it and it's almost like they've got something in mind. And I don't think it's rural Story County. So I did send it to Mike and I asked him to look at it and see what he thought about that. That's only 45 of the 100. there's another 25 that's going to IDOLS to a working group that's doing something about some pilot project with industrial water. That's not up for anybody to apply for. And then I think the remainder of it is for unsewered communities, the environmental health, that environmental health is working on. So we've got probably possibly some watershed, maybe this economically significant projects, but I doubt it. But I'm also thinking that our smaller communities, from what I've read about this, I don't think they're gonna, unless they can make a really big tourism push, I don't think they're gonna have too much luck with that economically significant projects. They're looking for something much bigger. So that's what I know. And we'll, I guess, Sarah and Mike will see if they want to work with Fulton and Ames on the edge of field. But if it's right, the edge of field fits right in. It's under something called hydro modification, which is a term I never heard of before. So anyway.
So you said they were having a meeting
Next week, they're gonna get together with Polk County and try to get something, but I did not get as far as looking. I looked at some of the information and scoring matrices. I did not look at the applications themselves, but Sarah had looked and said they thought they looked fairly easy. Maybe they were just a few paragraphs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
So, yeah, I don't know, but she said, compared to what she's been used to doing, she seems like that would be a pretty easy one to ask for. So I think it would be worthwhile for them to do that.
If the economically significant projects are equally simplified like that, it would be worth just trying for it.
throwing in a paragraph or two of information.
Yeah, I mean,
seeing
the
what
project
happens.
it's like,
Could be.
it's shovel ready. It's like,
Yeah,
it's not like it wouldn't be ready to go.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, what scares me about them is, and what gives me pause is that thing about lots of population and lots of geographic area. I think a small town wouldn't have. Here can make a Bacon's case. I don't know. That's all I got.
Should we go on to broadband update?
Sure.
And do you have any? Okay.
Okay. So I reached out to Gilbert. I haven't heard back. I think their clerk is on vacation for the holiday. And then Minerva Valley did send me the request to withdraw. And then I guess they got me confused with a different Amelia and sent me an email telling me to disregard. And then they sent another email saying they were withdrawing. So I forwarded that email to you too.
Was that just recent?
Yes, just
Okay.
before this, but I sent them another email just confirming that they're withdrawing. To be 100% sure. And then Marcus and I have been looking into the Nevada Manufactured Housing Community Project. So that project we've confirmed is to serve both areas on the east and west side of the road. The cost is just to put the fiber in the community. It's not running the fiber down from Ames or down the road. If you agreed to fund it, you might want to specify that though. But that's your understanding because it just wasn't super clear. And so what we looked at mainly is if they are considered underserved currently, because that's one of the thresholds that has to be met.
And so from the data points that we have, there was surveys done in there. There's 3 or
I think it was five
Five,
data points.
yeah. All of them would not meet the current threshold of, it has to be 25 down and 3 up. None of them meet both of those standards. So from that, the other piece of that is the request has to bring everything up to 100 symmetrical. MediaCom is the one that's currently providing services there. They can't provide symmetrical 100. It's not possible on cable. The only way you can do it is with fiber. So ICS is proposing that they bring in fiber, and it would meet those thresholds of that symmetrical 100
Yeah,
mobile coverage.
yeah, it would exceed it. But I think, the reason they're not a designated, a targeted area for some of the money through the state is because MediaCom is
Is technically
Technically.
in there.
So it doesn't meet the threshold?
it does.
It does.
Based on the 5 data points in our broadband
Okay.
survey.
Okay.
If that's good enough, though, I don't know. For the treasury or the auditor's office.
Meets the, so just so I'm clear,
Yeah.
meets the threshold of being an eligible community. That's what you mean.
Yes,
Okay.
based on our broadband survey.
Because the 5 households who responded did not even have 25/3.
Correct. They didn't have the correct combination of 25.
Some had, there was one that had 100 up, but null, or 100 download, but null upload speeds, which was
Yeah.
just didn't
That's-
make any sense.
No, in general. So and then
Yeah.
there's one that was like 5 and 1, 13 and 14.
Yeah,
So
and they provided, some more data points on, they have kids and the kids couldn't even do online learning at the speeds offered. And another comment was, we just need another provider in here.
So what you're saying is they have access,
They
Yeah.
technically have access to internet.
right?
Based on our broadband survey, it does not meet the definition of broadband.
Okay,
However, MediaCom says they're able to provide broadband speeds there, but we don't think they are.
we didn't see that in the survey.
Yeah.
So the people that took the survey did not.
So what did they use to test their upload and download? Did they?
So through the survey, there was a direct link to use a speed
They-
test and then it
okay.
pulled that data.
But
So
it didn't actually capture what the speed test said. You then had to take what the speed test said
And input
enter
it.
and input it.
yourself.
Right,
So
Gotcha,
all
okay.
so that's one thing I'm concerned about.
right.
About the survey results. I mean, it was the way they did it.
Yeah.
but The OCIO map then shows it covered.
Yes,
In the OCIO, if one household in the census tract has broadband, they consider it covered.
it
And
does,
that's why the
yeah.
OCIO maps are so bad.
right. Or if MediaCom says through their cable, they're providing that speed, then they're covered on those OCIO maps. But,
But-
it's cable, right?
yeah,
It's cable. We don't know how old it is. There certainly could be a number of issues with the age of yeah,
Is
the
there
the
a
infrastructure
way-
is old.
yeah,
It's older technology. It doesn't have the throughput that fiber has or the low latency. The symmetrical piece of it is a big deal too, because no matter how much you load onto it, you're not going to have issues with it. So
Is there a way for us to survey that community specifically, at not just do a speed test and tell us what it says, but is there a way to test their up and down speeds? So that we have that documentation that says, well, although yes, technically they, have access to internet,
yeah,
it's like throwing all of this back on America Online or something.
Yeah.
Dial-up speed.
yeah,
Terrifying.
I mean, aside from having them speed test and provide that information, the only other way that I would know of is for us to reach out and see if there's a portion of the population that would let us come and do the test ourselves. I mean, there's gonna be no different. I'm gonna use the same speed test that we're gonna ask them to use, right? So there's no difference as far as that goes. But if you want more data points, I think we could find a way to do that.
yeah.
But there's no way to just, well, I guess if there was a way to just test the line, then
We would
there
just-
would not have been a survey asking
Right.
people to do
Yeah.
that in the first place. Sorry, I just walked myself right back around.
No, so we could
No,
do a
that's-
postcard with a QR code or something. I don't know if I necessarily want to put that on the applicant because I want it to be
Yeah.
Right.
Independent,
independent.
yeah, we need, yeah.
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 We could, I mean, you can make an assumption that if there's people there who did the survey who have crummy speeds, if there are lots of other people there who didn't do the survey because somehow they never heard about it, who probably also have crummy speeds because they have the same provider.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no
That's not
MediaCom there, that's it.
correct.
So
That's not
why,
realistic.
one household would have a crummy speed and right next door, a household would have a stupendous speed from the same provider? What's the likelihood of that?
I mean, not super likely unless, you know, like I had it when I just recently bought a house and they had to run a whole new line for me because the old line, it was just time, right? So I mean, you could maybe see a little bit different there, but you also have a difference in what they're willing to pay. So the other piece of this is not, it's not, well, we can just supply 1 gig speed. So if I run a speed test, that isn't going to show the 1 gig speed. It's only going to show whatever that individual is willing to pay for. So if their budget is that they pay for the 25 meg, it's software locked. There's a theoretical you'll maybe hit 30, but you're never really going to push beyond that. It's software locked. That's not going to allow any more through. So it really is also a piece of that cost. And once you start talking about the difference between what ICS is proposing and what MediaCom is looking at, how that works, the pricing on the initial, like the monthly usage is relatively close, but one has data usage, one doesn't. So once you start worrying about data usage, you can go up to an extra $30 a month on MediaCom based on data usage. So for some of those families, you have kids to
Right.
school and work from home,
Right.
you can burn through that really, really quick. So especially if you're in this spot where you're on the lower one, you only have 200 gigs, you can burn through that really fast. So then the cost goes up.
And either option, the costs are gonna go.
Yeah. But I think on that point too, if we did a survey, an important question is what speeds are you paying for right now? Because that could be a problem where no one's paying for, 100 up and down speeds. And so it looks like there isn't broadband access, but that's just because no one signed up for that level of service. So we might want to work with MediaCom a little bit more too. But, part of the Treasury guidance is we should be focusing on, we're encouraged to look at projects that ensure affordability and projects that are by cooperatives or nonprofits or local governments to kind of lock in that affordability. And ICS is not a nonprofit. They're a private company.
Right.
And so, while they don't have a data cap that they might be charging more money a month on, how do we lock in that affordability long term?
Getting the technology there doesn't mean anybody's gonna purchase it,
Yeah,
because it might not be able to.
right, exactly.
They do provide us pricing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 100 that we've kind of talking about would be 45 a month, and that's, you don't have to rent modems, anything like that. That's the price. So there's a little bit difference there too, between two companies.
That's pretty reasonable.
I mean,
Yeah,
like that's not, I mean, I wouldn't bet.
I think
I'll
I
take
pay 75.
More than that.
Yeah,
So, and with once you start adding in like modem rentals with MediaCom and stuff, those are all prices that are things that are raising that price tag, so.
Mhm.
You make a really good point about how do we lock in that.
Affordability.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. And how do we, if we're gonna go through the effort of doing a survey, maybe it'd be worth asking too. What do you think is affordable? How much can you pay? Because $40, $45 is a lot to some folks. I'm sorry, I don't have more clear answers.
A lot of really good information.
Yeah.
None of these are gonna be easy.
Yeah. The ICS did say they could come give a presentation, or if you wanted more information, they seem pretty eager to
Do you remember
get us the info.
how many households there were there? They're gonna hook up.
I think there's 200.
It's a substantial,
It's
it's a
substantial.
substantial community. I mean,
I was gonna guess 200, but
That-
that's a total guess. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
Is it in
looked-
there? Little Miss Binder Lady? No, I can't remember.
The OCIO website for the,
There's 17 in Heather Glen.
yeah,
Sunday. I thought I had seen that picture before that was attached to the question. Was that?
I have that.
So on the map that they sent, with for Heather Glen, it shows there's a phase 2, 37 new lots. I don't know what that's about, 2018 expansion. So I don't know, maybe that's old information, but it's just what the note on their
And
map shows.
I did have them send me the map for the other side too. That wasn't in the folder. I don't know why.
This one?
Yeah,
I mean, it's substantial.
So this was attached to their question.
yeah.
Right, so you're right, you're, the space 237 new lots, 2018 expansion.
That's not one that's attached to the email.
No,
For
Today,
Yeah.
that's from today.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean, that alone.
This is on the west side of the road.
Mhm.
And then they're proposing to serve the east side too.
Right. That's that then.
Yeah, it's written down there. so. Well, it seems to me that that's a significant amount of people. I'm guessing their broadband. That's something to consider, but
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure we lock in an affordability aspect somehow, or are comfortable with the pricing and are comfortable with the data showing that this is an underserved area.
Right, I think that, yes, I think an argument will be made that it's already being served.
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
and we need to
Mhm.
be able to really back up the argument if we decide to fund it, that they're
Yeah.
not
Yep.
being served, and that, but for this solution,
They,
the access that
Yeah,
they have actually
exactly.
cannot serve them.
Mhm.
not adequate. It's not, doesn't meet the definition of.
Yeah.
adequate.
Right. If that is indeed the case.
Yeah. I mean, we believe it, but there, 5 data points isn't of 200. Not enough.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So they say 259 homes.
Okay.
Heather Glen.
You know?
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's 250, yeah.
Yeah.
Where you at, Leanne, on counting? You were counting?
I'm just texting the park manager.
It's easier.
Yeah, maybe they can help us.
Well, to me, it says like we probably need little bit more information to make a determination
Yeah.
on
How
that.
do we get that information?
I mean, as far as the survey, I mean, we can, if that's.
Yeah.
One way to lock in affordability could be with the contract.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that
Yeah.
piece is probably
Yeah.
just how you guys would do it.
Yeah.
We could look at what other providers around here, and get an average of what services are and what the cost is for various levels.
And how long they lock in there, because a lot of times you can sign up with a new provider and they'll lock in a certain price for, maybe a year or not more than a year,
Yeah.
2, 3 years. But then it'll increase, but finding out what the increase is. Is it, $10 or is it, 25%, 30% increase? What is that?
Yeah.
Well, and I think another important thing is talking to MediaCom and saying, this is our understanding of the level of service that is possible with the technology that's available in this
Mhm.
area. Yes or no? Like,
Yeah.
is that accurate? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, we just called and tried to set up accounts, basically.
Yeah, I called talk to them, and they said they could provide 1 gig, so
they said they could provide.
that's what they said,
Uh-huh.
so
But it sure doesn't look like that.
What did they say they could provide specifically?
the 1 gig, it's 1 gig download, 15 meg upload, which, so even at their highest tier, they're not even meeting the symmetrical requirement of the grant of that 100.
Mhm.
So there's a thing, so on copper, you can't have the same speeds up and down, and so that's where Mediacom kind of falls short, is there's no fiber there, so. If it was fiber, then you could get that symmetrical speed. But
Right.
And are they not doing anything with fiber? MediaCom?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Uh-uh.
And that information about cable versus fiber and copper, is that information that you found independent from what ICS was saying in their emails, or is that?
Yeah, and I talked about team too.
Yeah.
that you talked to
Yeah.
ICS? Okay.
So-
I'm just
so-
trying to make sure that we're
Yeah.
not taking anybody's word for
Right.
No.
anything.
Yeah.
Yep, no, I talked to IT too as well.
So yeah, and that, I think that the difference there is the grant has 2 different thresholds. So one is the project should be able to provide those symmetrical 100 up, 100 down speeds, and Mediacom's technology cannot provide those. But the question is Mediacom's technology capable of providing any broadband speeds to make that community considered to be underserved per the Treasury's 25 free speeds? Does that make,
So the treasuries.
yeah,
Does it say in there, does it give it any minimum speeds? Not for a new project. But does it say what they would consider to be
underserved.
underserved?
Yes.
Like, and
Yes.
that's what,
And that's what we're wondering. We don't think it's met. We think they're underserved.
It's the 25.3 is
Uh-huh.
what, anything below that
Mhm.
is
Anything
what
below
would fall
25.3.
under that
Mhm. And
underserved.
so Mediacom says they're providing service above that level, but our 5 points in the data survey show that they're not. Broadband survey,
okay,
yeah. But at the same time, Mediacom with their cable is not able to, if they were to propose a project, provide the 100 up, 100 down speeds needed. That has to be done through fiber.
I think we get confusing because we use the
25.3, and then you do the 100 up and
Right, so
down.
it's basically so
I don't
that,
understand all of.
Yeah.
I'm not a
So-
techie person,
I think they're trying to make it so you're not putting in,
Mediocre.
Substandard.
you said it, there you go. Something that's going to be outdated very quickly. So this 100 thing is viable for a very long time. I mean, most people, 100, like, you're gonna be fine for a very long time. It's not just putting back, putting in some more of the older technology
You know,
that,
if you're gonna do it right. Don't
Yeah,
get something that 2 years from now
Yeah.
isn't gonna do. And 6.11 is the, and then November 15 FAQ has it pretty well.
6.11.
6.11 is on page 30 of the November 15, 2021 FAQ. It basically says, yeah, underserved, or you have to be under 25.3 to qualify as underserved. But if you're gonna do something for an area that's underserved, you should do 100. Because that's gonna be something that's worth putting in that draft.
And Mediacom is saying they are above 25.3, but no, I'm sorry, I know you just said all of this, but
No, it's very
But
confusing.
none of the data points
Sure.
reflect
Sure.
that. But we also don't know what plan those people are on, so they could be
Yeah.
on a very
Limited plan,
limited plan.
yeah. Or they could
They
be
could-
signed up for the gigabit speed plan
and
and
it's
just,
just getting, or, they could be on a really old plan that's no longer offered, but at that point of where Mediacom increased speeds, but then started adding data caps, depending on how you're looking at that, people will be like, well, I don't want a data cap. I'll stay at my speed. I'm not taking that data cap. And so
we
that
just,
could be another piece of that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors on that side that
So if we did a survey, I mean, we really have to,
we have to flesh out those questions.
yeah, really focus on those
Yeah.
questions. to
Are you
get
on a
the right
legacy?
information we want back.
Yeah.
right,
250 houses.
259.
That's a big survey.
Second.
That's a huge survey.
yeah, at postcards, it'd be 40 cents times 259.
On 18 across the road, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's really.
yeah, yeah,
And realistically, how many surveys are we gonna get back? I mean, we're doing the broadband survey.
yeah,
We went around and we just dropped leaflets kind of the different places and communities that we thought.
I think we would probably get better if we went to this neighborhood and said, there's a project being proposed for your neighborhood to get really good internet, but we need information from you first. I think we would probably get much better
Response.
response.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We can look at some of the data because we did in the unincorporated mobile home parks and subdivisions that had, they have the mailboxes as you enter. I went around and put,
yeah, that's
please take the survey, little poll thing, and we put them out there. So, or maybe just an image,
right.
but
Yeah,
with a QR code, and we could look back at those areas and see how many surveys we got back from that to see if that also was
that was
effective.
working.
Oh, yeah.
Because then, I mean, that's a simple thing where we could put some on their mailboxes because they have quite a few out there. And then,
Or if Leanne knows the manager.
yeah,
So
Is it okay to? Mailbox?
we,
Not in it.
No, I know.
On it.
Outside of the mailbox.
You posted where there's a bank of mailboxes. You
Yeah.
put up a-
on this, yeah,
On the side.
in a sleeve,
For the-
nice.
Do we still have those
the arm
flags?
for the flag, yeah.
So what kind of responses did you get with that when you did?
That's what I'm saying. I just thought of that. We'll have to look back and look at
Yeah,
the data to see how many points we pulled from those places where I did put those to see what kind of a response.
Was
Because
that on,
if that worked well, then we could maybe start there.
was that on the broadband? Or was that something?
That was for this, yeah.
So I guess going back to a comment you made before that I wrote down is, you
you don't think it's a targeted area, but probably underserved based on the broadband study that we did and the 5 data points. The question comes, is 5 enough data points for the justification?
Yeah,
And that's where it may
that's
be
really,
the driver for us to need to do another survey to say, if this would be something we'd fund and we need to justify,
yeah,
do 5 out of 300,
is that good?
is that good enough?
Yeah,
I don't think it is.
Do we still have, well, we could get the survey. That,
yeah, I've got all the questions.
you've got all the questions.
Mhm.
Probably add a couple to kind of flesh out a couple of questions that we
Yeah.
had about what service are you already currently using and what speed
And
are
what's,
you?
Is it a
what's
legacy?
speed, what's the cost?
Yeah,
Yeah.
legacy.
Or
yeah,
what's
kinda
a reasonable cost?
What's a reasonable cost to
To
you?
flesh
Because I know you're gonna get
Yeah.
on that free, but that's the reasonable cost everybody's gonna want.
If you say other than 0.
1 to 10.
$1.
So, yeah, I don't know what the timeline is like on this though.
But we really have.
Okay,
I mean,
Is that the only broadband we have left? That's
the
the
city of
only one?
Gilbert, which she's waiting for a response.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
that
don't-
was a
I don't-
lower,
I don't feel pretty confident. I don't feel confident on that one.
that they can do 100.
Because I'm realizing the 100 is fiber technology.
Right.
Right.
And so I think that's why their speed's lower than that, because they're not proposing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, about 1.2 million is what that one is.
Yeah, and, you know, my thought process is it just stays with the rest of them in the mix right now until some further.
Right.
So,
And I have a couple of things just to update on this. I asked the Nevada School District's IT director, when the pandemic first began, we purchased hotspots and located any student that needed a hotspot because of for access. They're given one. There were none that were distributed to either side of the road.
Interesting.
And then I did also email the city administrator for Nevada, to ask if MetroNet has gone south of 30. And he thinks they have, because he's on South 32 and has access to MetroNet.
Oh,
That's why I told Marcus over to see if he had reached out to MetroNet.
okay,
So there may be, we have another provider that's.
we can
servicing.
check.
I've not heard back. I texted the manager, I've not heard back yet. No, she's probably at work.
Yeah. If MetroNet has plans in the next year to go there too, though, then we shouldn't be. That's in the actual guidance too.
that might be a reason to say,
Yeah,
let the market work it out.
yeah.
You said the school did not distribute any hotspots to either neighbor.
No. Which I was very surprised
That
about.
is,
And I know there's a there's a pretty larger size school population. And we have one-to-one throughout the district. Every student has a laptop in our district, so we shouldn't need a hotspot.
They didn't have sufficient access.
Or if their families had their own hotspot, you might have to purchase their own, which you're not gonna know, but.
How many hotspots did you buy or get? You know,
I can go back to my visits. We
I mean,
got a lot.
A lot.
I'm trying to think how it's almost like a decision tree, how we decide how much work to put into this. If MetroNet says, yes, they're planning on going into that area, then we would be in a situation of favoring one possible
Yeah.
service provider over another, and that would be a easy, no, we're not gonna do this.
right.
If they don't have plans, and if then maybe it's time to think about doing a survey unless there's a little bit more information we can get short of all the work doing a survey. And Leanne, sounds like you might follow up, have a little more follow-up for us. Let's try to do the easy follow-up first that might
Okay.
tell us that this is not, if this is an application we shouldn't be considering, and hold up on the survey for
Yeah.
a little while, because that would be a big deal.
Okay.
And I would assume one of your questions would be to the mobile home market. Is Metronet already out there?
Yeah, I asked her, who they have for internet providers servicing the units and what kind of plans and speeds.
Thanks, Leanne.
Great, thank you. Anything else on this?
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Yes, thanks very much. We're learning more every time we talk about this survey.
Me too.
We're learning experience.
I don't know if you wanted to go on with that emails, or 2 emails, I think, from Kimberly. If you want to look at that first, and then we can talk about our morning of the meeting. If that sounds all right. I just kind of briefly looked through the came in around 1 o'clock. Let's kind of briefly look through her emails on here.
Good information.
Yeah, she said she didn't hear back, or she did hear back from 2 cities.
And she gave her assessment on some other ones.
Yeah, I really appreciated that.
Do we have any more discussion just based on that, or wait, if we have other questions when we have our next meeting after the first?
Did she
year?
ever email the board?
She did, she provided
Oh.
information to us. You just- I'll forward it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Did you get that? No? Okay.
It was just,
We just haven't seen.
Oh, I guess it does say just to the 3 of us. I'm
So
sorry, I thought it,
to
The ARPA?
Yeah.
yeah.
Just forward it to ARPA. And all of us should get it, right? That's my email box. Sorry. I need to clean it
the
out.
one I
Just probably
see
lose
that maybe we don't have a lot of information on is Searing. Yeah, she said, although it's all eligible, there's no timeline and not as well justified as the others. I believe the engineering needed would provide better costs and timelines to ensure it could all be done in time. It would be a great benefit. Did they ask?
Zero?
Yeah.
They asked for 1.7 million.
Yeah, but did they break it down in any way?
Your application number was
It's
24.
number
24. Yeah, clean it up.
I had the John's entire tool.
Mine's gone.
Yeah, no, I just want to know what they have. Right, can you go back up? just there?
Engineering was included in the 1.7.
Right, but 134,000 was the engineering. Right there, yeah. Water line installation. The question, it sounds like from Kimberly's review that we would need more information from the Zeering one.
And the project is in the planning and development phase. Just wonder.
There should be in there. Let me double check.
Did they ask for money to repair the roadways too, or just for the water project?
Asphalt.
Asphalt patching is up there too.
I don't, well, yeah, is there an FAQ that said yes, if you could replace your streets? That could be part of it. Street work could be part of it.
I'd have to relook.
I mean, it would make sense if they're gonna dig up the streets to do work on the
That-
water that they would need to.
Patch what they just
Yeah,
did, yeah.
They have no in-kind money and no other money, they're just requesting 100% of it from us.
Yep. That's what it appears as though.
Did we ask, well, there are so many questions. Have we asked them any questions? Follow-up questions?
the water budgets.
Yeah.
We did, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah,
I don't
for
remember the
Zeering?
answer, but I remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing is too, is our application didn't require that they have. a
No,
map.
it did not require that they have a map.
We asked
If there was
for a
any.
map, But we did not require.
But no,
a
there
map.
is no requirement.
I didn't have any questions for 24 marked on my spreadsheet.
I didn't either.
I think nobody asked about whether they got any ARPA funds themselves. Why do I think that?
I'm thinking there was, but it's not on.
I don't have it on mine either, that
Okay.
I mean,
But
Something
doesn't mean we
about-
can't follow up with them and ask them.
The only thing I had noted was borrowing capacity question.
Yeah.
A borrowing capacity question.
Oh,
For any of them.
for any of them, but then I think we got that, didn't Leanne provide us that information, or you provided us that information? as well?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's relevant. so.
Right, right.
Their ARPA funds would probably be somewhat small. They're a small city.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't imagine their ARPA funds are.
no, they were getting a pretty small.
Yeah.
So it was on our list of questions.
Well, they were getting 77,194 in ARPA funds. I don't know where we got that.
I think we got that from Leanne.
Yeah.
Leanne probably
but
got that because Leanne did pull up what all the cities
Yeah.
got.
The only question that I had noted was their borrowing capacity. You know,
And Linda was asking about that, and like I said, I don't,
you sent that, I couldn't figure out, it looked like everybody had some borrowing capacity.
everybody has borrowing capacity most likely, but is that, I mean, that,
Is that relevant?
is that relevant? Is it even relevant?
down my desktop, I'm not sitting at my computer, so.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm pretty sure you're the one that
yeah.
broke down what, how much
yeah,
the city
yeah.
got.
Yeah, because it is available online, but I
Yeah.
just don't.
Yeah, yeah, that's,
Somebody had to say, 'cause I didn't.
So what
I had it
were,
noted, so.
what were, her questions on that one? I mean, what was her issue on that one?
oh,
Kimberly's?
Was she unsure it would get done in time?
one was referencing engineering needed would provide better costs and timelines to ensure it
Oh.
was done in time.
Because they haven't done anything, they've just got.
Yeah, she just kind of referenced, she thought it was eligible, but I just said there were no timelines. And it was not as well justified as some of the other applications.
Gotcha, okay.
Was the main thing.
I guess maybe the question for me would be, because it is, the whole thing, as far as I can tell, is would it, if we could only fund it partially, because as far as ask, we have in terms of wastewater, would it be useful for them to do it in quadrants or something like that? We could fund the engineering, maybe fund that first quadrant, which deals with the school, which they were saying is really a concern, an issue. Would, and then they could plan the rest of it later. Is that a feasible strategy?
Well, I don't think there's any rules that say you have to fund 100% of any of this stuff.
No, I don't either, but if it turns out we fund 25% and they say, we really can't do anything with 25%.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're gonna go down that path, you just go with, we'll fund the engineering study to get a better, grasp on the feasibility / timeline / cost.
And that could also give them the information. We'd say if that can be broken down in phases, you could come back to us and ask for a phase if you want.
Well, or it would give everyone a better idea of what the real need, or what the cost and timeline is.
Right, right. Yeah, that might be something to.
I mean,
It, I mean,
Yeah,
just
that
getting the
sounds-
engineering part done would be good, like at least then they.
yeah, I mean, if, and her concerns are legit, as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't as well thought out. It was more, oh, we gotta apply for these dollars, this is a great place, which it
Right.
isn't necessarily not true, it's just that there wasn't a lot of thought put into, just gotta apply for it, I don't have any idea if they're even close on the cost.
Right, right. And I don't know what they're using their ARPA dollars for, if they were,
Yeah, it's $77,000, so, yeah.
yeah, so I'm sure they might be for some other things that they didn't list it here as using it towards this project. At all.
That's what has the engineering cost. What? 77.
Oh, yeah, but
Exactly. That's not.
yeah, they may have other projects, and you know, got other projects they may have identified those dollars towards.
Okay, so, So it's about, they talk about 4 projects. They talk about the elementary school area, they talk about Main Street area. They talk about the northeast where Care Center is, and then the southern part is there. So one could kind of ballpark it and say engineering plus 25% of the construction, where's that get you?
Engineering plus what?
And the engineering plus 25% of construction, 25% of the asphalt. I'm just trying.
Yeah, I don't know that until you get an engineering thing, you can make a determination of whether that's viable or not, because this is all their guess as to what that's gonna be. So what if it comes back and 25% of the costs that we just said, yeah, we do are $4 million? What are we gonna do then?
Yeah.
I mean,
Engineering.
I'm not
Well,
sure what they're
engineering would
using.
also help provide the timeline.
Right.
For which are they gonna be able to meet
Right.
the timeline
right,
is the other thing.
I think, I think we're talking about those.
I mean, we leave that, I'm not saying we don't leave that request out there as it sits until we know more, but only fund their engineering per se at this point. And then when more is known, then say, okay, well, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go ahead and continue this or not?
So if we have questions for them, one of the questions is, you do not give us a timeline with dates on it. You should give a progression in it. We'll do this first, then we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. I think the question is, do you have a timeline? Right? Can you say that this will be done by December of 2020?
They checked that box.
They check
They
that
checked the
box.
box, but
Did?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they
They
can
didn't
say
provide a
that
timeline.
realistically until they have an engineering
How do
report.
you know? I mean, you just don't.
And that's what
They didn't lay it
what
out.
Kimberly's saying is,
Yeah, they just check, yes.
That it can be done. Will you have it done? Sure.
Sure, yeah,
easy,
that's a long time from now.
right?
I mean.
But you're right.
It's really not.
That
I
engineering
know.
report, the fact that the projection is higher than what they have here, then realistically, could they get it done in that timeline?
They might need
They-
funding.
Yeah, they're gonna probably need some additional revenue where, so does that then change their direction of what they can do with their project?
I think they need to get some engineering. in there.
Right.
So we could ask some questions, but we're pretty convinced they don't have the answers to them right now. So,
The question might be, if money went towards engineering, when do you think that would be completed?
and is that for us to determine whether we could hold back some money and possibly help them with some of it? Is that where you'd be asking that question?
Possibly, yeah, I'm just, if we decide, hey, we're gonna allocate this much out and take so much back because we have some projects we're interested in funding, but we don't have as much detail from them at this particular time, that might be, I mean, it may be helpful to them too, just to have that engineering cost, that engineering portion covered,
Yes.
to help give them a better idea as a community what they can and cannot do.
Yes.
So if you were to call them up, what would you say?
I would say, I looked over your application, there's some areas that are a little bit unclear to us on your timeline. It looks as if one of your more urgent areas is the engineering report or evaluation, whatever you want to call it. When do you think that could be started and completed by, to give you a determination on the extent of your project and the timeline?
Or even just the board may be considering simply funding the engineering costs, and we'll consider the rest of the application after.
We may consider.
Yes, we may consider the
Depending on the
application for
results,
more once there's
depending
more
on the
information.
results of the engineering, we might be able to consider helping with some of.
Right, and I think that's what Lisa was saying, just leave it in the mix until we have more information.
Right, the question then comes, how long
does it take for them to do the engineering report? Is that
Right.
a couple months? Is that 8 months?
Right,
Yeah,
Depends if they have it scheduled.
right.
well, that's it. Do they
You
already
know,
have it?
do they already have something in the works on somebody's schedule to get the engineer for this? I
Yeah,
don't know.
Have the engineer in mind, have you engaged them or talked about engaging them, and what's their timeline? Is there give enough direction for somebody to contact them, Jim? And who would be doing that?
We didn't send any questions to them. First round, so
No, we didn't. We're doing it now.
doing it now. I mean, do we use the same process?
So that would be.
Would you send an email? I mean, I don't know.
Are you going to do that, Sandra? Everybody's looking at you.
I could send the email. We're down here at 4:30 and I can probably send it out tonight or in the morning.
I mean, how soon do you want an answer?
well, our next meeting, we don't have to set up till what, January 4th. I figure next week, most people are
Gone.
gone, and I don't know.
Oh, so I could,
Well, I'm
I
just,
could send it next week. then.
right, well, I'm also thinking is, I don't know with the city, but you know, what the folks from up in Searing, what their hours are.
And when they're closed, some cities are closed tomorrow,
Right,
Friday
right,
versus Friday and Monday.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, the city of Ames is
City of
tomorrow.
Ames
and
is
Friday.
tomorrow.
Yeah, so, yeah, so, you know, you may have some that are on vacation who would be able to respond to this.
Next week. I mean,
Yeah, I just, it's, yeah.
I would say if you're able to get it out tonight, great, and if not, next.
Next week.
And
yeah, because you're off tomorrow.
Yeah.
I thought the January 4th we're
I am
holding for an ARPA session.
Right,
So if we could have it back by January 3rd.
I don't know.
Linda,
Too
should-
many things moving.
Yes.
I just noticed we have a session January 4th, so if we could ask to get it back January 3rd.
Okay.
By January 3rd, so we have time to look at it before.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that should give them enough.
I think they're the only one that I really had a question about. In terms of the wastewater. We said,
and I know that
you know,
you guys have not seen the email, so you, when they review it, they may have some additional ones as well.
I believe it. Did you?
Right,
motion?
yeah, I just barely looked at them, when she sent them.
So when I was kind of making notes on what all the water and wastewater were, I included that Nevada project, but we really are looking at that as housing.
What?
What?
The
No.
water uplift,
Yeah.
No,
That's water.
that's water.
Project Uplift is the Nevada water one.
Did we not get that one?
We have a question on,
Two.
is that number 2?
Well, the Kimberly looked at
I don't think we gave her that one,
it. I don't think we did either.
because they were just asking to, I think, fill a gap area.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
That's all that they were asking for, was to fill a gap.
it wasn't,
And
Wasn't a question.
because the
They're putting all
majority
of-
of their funds are going toward this.
They're putting
Right.
all of their ARPA dollars there, I believe.
Mhm.
Right, right. And I think that's Leanne, that you had emailed to Jordan and responded back, and we thought his response clarified the question we had with the numbers,
The
which
numbers.
are a little confusing.
Mhm.
May recipients use funds for pre-project development for eligible water, sewer, and other projects. Yes. I'm trying to figure out my question.
Are you still looking at Project Uplift?
I'm thinking of Project Uplift and I'm thinking of the COLA project.
Oh, okay, that's housing.
That's housing, but it also has
It's the infrastructure for the housing
infrastructure,
development.
water
Right.
infrastructure.
Yeah,
So is it water or is it
that's,
housing?
I coded it as water.
See,
Yeah.
but
I
I'm
was
not
just like,
sure,
oh, that's
what
the
I'm
one.
looking for is whether if it's developing housing and part of the fund, part of the money is the infrastructure, the water infrastructure. Is that what this money, what they were anticipating this money was for? Or was it that we've got aging, failing things and it's a water quality issue? My assumption would be if you're doing it from scratch, you're developing new housing, you're doing it right. You're not taking, you know, this is like repair and fix the stuff that's falling apart, not helping new housing developments.
Right, right.
You see what I'm saying?
I do, yeah, I think it's a sticky place to be. I think if we were talking about building affordable housing in a qualified census tract, and
Yeah.
this is like targeted affordable housing, I think it would be a different conversation. It would be clearer.
Mhm.
And I,
So it's not a question for Kimberly. It's a question
Right,
for us.
right,
Okay,
I think
thank
you're
you.
right, yes.
That's where I got it. That's where I was going. Sorry it took me so long to fumble around and figure it out, but that was my concern with both Nevada and COLA. Whether we call them water and wastewater projects or whether they were housing projects.
But I think Nevada clearly is water. Because it's to help with their sewer, their pump, right? The-
Existing coming to that.
To an existing neighborhood, an existing area of town.
So that additional housing can be served in the area too.
So that additional housing can be served. Housing.
Installation of a lift station. 37 years old. The system.
This lift station will also be serving existing housing that's already there, right?
Yes,
So
Yeah.
new and existing.
Just
they're increasing the capacity,
Yeah.
Right,
essentially.
right.
With the ARPA funds we are receiving, the city will be utilizing the funds to construct a much needed lift station. Lift station was 1.1 million. Okay, it's just to fill, it says to fill the gap.
Right.
Yes.
In order to, we are asking the county to help fund the remaining amount to fill the gap in order to provide more opportunities for affordable housing in the near future.
Yeah, so they're using their 995,000 of their ARPA dollars, and I think that's all of their ARPA dollars towards this. They're asking for 182,000 to fill that, the difference from what the total amount is and what they have.
And they say if the city does not receive 100% of this funding request, we would need to limit the buy down of 10% of the new housing on the north side of town. The city's overall goal for the future is to provide funding for LMI across the whole community. For 10% of every new development.
So they've tied the application to new housing.
And I believe Polo does that too. They're going on a lot.
Did you found your quote this
I
morning?
did, so that's,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I think we just found another couple questions from that.
yeah. So do you want me to,
Yeah.
tonight talk about it? So we had our Zoom call this morning. It was us with Jamie Cashman and David Farmer from Scott County. So Lisa, fill in where I.
Oh, you want my
I have all
sarcasm?
my
You want me
notes.
to add my sarcasm or what?
Yeah, so,
Okay,
so some things
Frosting.
I'm just going to, we've already said before, is that CBDG funds cannot use as a match. You can't use them with other federal programs, but you could use to fill a gap.
To fill, yeah.
So that can be used. For some of the projects that are infrastructure or looking, some of the infrastructure projects, they talked about needing to tie to COVID mitigation, not just expansion. So that needs to be clearly defined that they are tying it to COVID mitigation. And
Not
stuff.
just expansion, correct.
Right. So like
Infrastructure.
infrastructure needs to be tied to COVID mitigation, not just expansion, which is a little different for the housing or homeless.
Right.
Those type of
Okay.
situations.
Yes, the
Yeah,
housing, set aside the housing.
Okay.
Right,
We're talking infrastructure requests,
Okay.
AKA,
Boys and Girls Club.
Boys and Girls Club, YSS,
and child support, any of those, right.
that are not low-income house, or not housing related.
Okay.
They have to be tied to COVID.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. And so David Farmer gave an example of what they're doing. Now, this is on a public building, not on a private.
Right,
We-
that's why I asked that question.
Yeah,
because
so
I'm
they
like,
are, Jamie's gonna still do some more checking for private buildings for us. But he used the word, what was it, proportional costs. So they have like a building and stuff that they are.
It's a
all
detention
new,
center.
The detention center, were they doing all new? And all new and are renovating, whatever, is that, he gave an example of, so the kitchen portion, let's say the kitchen portion is 900 square feet. If they're making it larger, say 1,500 square feet, he would proportionally say, okay, those 600 square feet is what ARPA funds
Can go
would
to-
cover because that is addressing
Oh.
social distancing, or it seemed like very confusing to me.
Well, and
That-
I think the example he actually used was the nurse's station, which
Yeah.
made more sense,
Yes,
made the most sense, because, you know, if you have a nurse that's in a little place versus a bigger place, you get more space.
right.
But
So-
yes, for their detention center, which is a public building,
Right.
they're proportionally putting some ARPA money toward it to expand the space for COVID, and he's using the one that made sense to me, which was,
1.7,
Yeah.
public and physical health emergencies.
Yeah.
Is what he was doing. We did talk about meals, because we've got a couple meals requests. If it was looking at the negative impact category or the household assistance program. But he did say, reminding us that negative impact occurs after March 3rd of 2021. So you can't go back to,
pre-pandemic, or pre,
you can't go back.
before the legislation was signed.
Right.
It's not retroactive.
So, sarcasm. So someone can't have been hungry before March, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Is that
No, I
really
think-
what they're saying?
No,
here's,
because that would have been like under tiers.
here's what, yes, here's what, the rules are pretty clear on a lot of these things. You
Right.
can't go before 3/31/21. So not that I disagree with your statement. It's just that that's what the rules are saying. So our example that we were asking a question about was Colin's request for meals. And that, first of all, it was available to everyone. Do we need to look at the low income or income requirements or eligibility type things, first of all? And second of all, the program itself, because they had done it before, And I think that's where
David was asking.
that's where David started asking that question. They had done it before, they've stopped it. They want to continue it, it sounds like, but they did it during the pandemic. And they thought it was a worthwhile thing, so they wanted to continue it. And that's when he started talking about, well, just make sure if you're going back prior to 3/3, you can't spend these funds.
You cannot reimburse anybody for
Right.
anything that they
Right.
spent prior to March 3rd.
Right,
They could have been hungry, they could have eaten, gotten food from
Right.
another thing, but for now, we're moving, we're looking
Right.
forward.
Right.
So you can't take, so basically you can't use this money to backfill that
Correct.
account.
Correct,
Correct.
correct.
But they could start,
I,
start the
Yes, yeah.
project now and start.
that was how I
Getting
read the
bills.
application to begin with, was that they were starting the program up again because it was successful.
Right. And
So they
have
wanted to
funding.
continue to do that. So I didn't tie it to previous at all, in my mind. And
Just
maybe the way we
going
explained it is
maybe, yeah, it
why.
might have been maybe how we explained it,
Mhm.
or whatever, but we were just trying to say they had done this before.
Uh-huh.
I think he was trying to say, did they do it before? Did it end?
Because
of
of.
the
Right.
pandemic,
Right,
and now they're able to do it up, and I think that's where he was trying to
tie it.
tie that in.
Yeah.
So what did they say about the idea of feeding everybody, not having an income limit?
Doesn't
Uh,
matter.
It can fall under, it would be able to fall under either the house or the
Households.
aid to households
Or
or the
negative or
negative, the
economic
tourism
impact.
hospitality. I mean,
Yeah,
if you can make it tie to it,
Right.
yeah. I think we have a really strong argument about the tourism.
Yeah, you're helping
Mhm.
those businesses.
piece.
out.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I think that answers that.
hospitality
who's
slash
able to
tourism.
use it
right.
question.
And what's the date again? Is that March 3rd, 2020 or 2020?
21.
21.
21, okay.
that's what the act.
Yeah, the only time you can go back before that is for premium pay, and we just went,
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
right,
Not doing that.
right.
Right, yeah.
and I was telling them too, that the reporters are sending out, I don't know where it's coming from. The recorder asked me the question because it was all a buzz on their base camp of their sort. Wanting to know about hazard pay. Because apparently some of the counties are doing hazard pay to their exempt employees. And my answer was, Surrey County decided early on not to go down that road because it's too, HR and HR
You
and,
can blame me.
and the board decided not to go down that road because it can be very inequitable, it can be very slippery slope, all those things. And that was sufficient for a reporter to hear, and we talked about that this morning also. And Scott County actually made that same decision.
So I think Lynn County did too.
Yeah,
A write-up. I mean, the exempt employee piece, that doesn't hit a
Right.
lot of, I mean, we don't have that many exempt.
Well, I don't know, I thought Story County did a really good job of shutting down, protecting everybody,
Yeah.
like it's not,
they got paid all through it.
I mean-
Almost everybody got paid all through it.
right, I think there are some that didn't have a choice as far as having to work with people directly within the jail. and
Right,
office.
right.
So the other thing we talked about was housing, since that seems to be a lot of housing under, David said he was using 3.1 and 3.11, which is unhoused persons, supportive housing, which is code 310. He did talk about subcontract and nonprofit. That was kind of our to purchase like property. And one thing that he referenced, mindful thing, was needing to follow the uniform grant guidance. So the UGG, and that if entities receive over
750,000, it's a single audit. Yeah.
Right, then it triggers a single audit and did the full, yeah, they need to follow the full procurement guidelines. We also talked about if they would ever dispose of the property. Well, I guess I should take a step back. We did ask first about land acquisition. So general land acquisition, separate from housing, is deemed as a no.
Well,
Well,
here's how Jamie answers that question.
I don't see anything anywhere where you definitely can, but that you definitely can't.
Right, right. And the recommendation has been all along from multiple conversations until the final rules come out.
Don't, yeah, it's not clear. It's not clear on there.
Unclear and a huge amount of money to pay back if you're wrong.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
So you have like the, we wouldn't recommend it, hold off.
Right. So, that's what I was saying is, if you would allow a nonprofit to purchase land, if they were at some, or to acquire land, however you want to use, whatever term you want to use, if they were to dispose of it, you know, they're no longer going to do this anymore, they're going to sell, then they need to reach out to the federal government and follow the federal government's guidelines because they've utilized these federal funds.
And it's the county's responsibility to make sure that they do all of that.
Well, I think they could be subject to.
Yeah. And well, it's part of our,
Well, we'd probably be past that because it would already be funded. I'm just saying if they were 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, they can't just, from our thing, just up and sell.
so,
Okay.
They have to contact the federal government because these were federal dollars that came in for their land acquisition.
Okay.
And to determine, I think it triggers, well, I think it already would trigger, I think he said, this is where you have to correct me if I'm wrong, they'd have to do like land assessment to make sure it wasn't a cultural, any of that historical,
blah,
any
blah,
of that,
blah,
yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
So they'd have to do that
Before,
now,
right.
before. Right,
And if it's anything like the Army Corps of Engineers process.
Absolutely.
Right,
That's a good example there.
Forget it.
yeah.
At free land,
We're
you
still,
mean?
what, how many years, 30 years on that?
The
So,
free land?
so I
30-some
think
centuries.
that's where, for me, my, if it's not clearly defined in the rules, it might not be the best
And
road to go
then,
down.
and if you're looking at the Army Corps of Engineers, we've had to spend some money
Right,
on that. Lisa might remember how much.
134,000.
134,000
That was the first one. We've also spent another 46, but who's counting
For freelance.
for that free land?
For freelance.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Every time we turn around, there's something that we have to do and we have to pay for to get this tree land.
And they're in the middle of the, is it the historical or some sort of survey now to determine whether,
Yeah, yeah.
which
I
has been
know.
going on for like a year.
so
So
I
no
know,
more
I
free
am,
land.
I don't have any, I have not done much, Lisa, you probably know more on this, but I was looking at the Uniform Grant Guidance, UGG, and they did talk, I actually found something that Johnson County had, we may already have it, and I just, Googled or whatever, because it talked about, like the micro purchase, the small purchase, and what is it, the larger purchase, and I think like if the micro purchase is less than 10 grand of what they need to fall under 2 CFR 200-320A, and a small purchase criteria is under 200-320B. Yeah, so there's certain stipulations that are involved. Yeah, and I just didn't have a chance to read all of
I
that.
think I've heard enough.
So it sounds like if we did do something like that, you need an expert to follow all of that
Oh,
guidance.
yeah.
Oh,
from this
absolutely.
perspective.
That's why I've been saying from
Yeah.
day one that, yeah.
I think both our eyes were kind of glazing over on that.
And that need to dispose of, then it gets to like how long? Is that forever? Is that-
Forever.
I don't know.
Could
I don't
be
think
for a
it's forever. Honestly, I think that there's a number of years after the grant is closed that it's free and clear. You don't have to deal with that
Mhm.
when you're on grant dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, but we didn't
is a-
have that information at that particular time to look at. So I mean, that would be something, if we were to do that, you'd have to make it very clear to whatever entity that, okay, if you're doing this, if something should fall apart, you can't just up and say, okay, I want to sell the land. You have a process through the federal government. You have to go through so many years.
But that's just if it's land acquisition. If it's acquiring a building that happens to be on land, as buildings usually do.
It
Does
doesn't
that,
apply.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that
apply.
doesn't apply.
so the bridge, if we're looking at the bridge homes, looking specifically at that, the eightplex may still be doable, but the buy all of these properties seems to be a high risk right now. Or very complicated.
Yes.
It's not recommended even to do it. And if we did do it, here's this uniform grant guidance, here's federal guidelines for disposal. Oh my goodness.
And I don't know what the acronym stands for, Lisa. SHPO?
Sure, but ship on, I can't remember it either. And I was just looking through this to see if it's talked about here, but
He
it's,
said, NEPA studies doesn't apply and SHPO for housing, does that apply? And I have a question mark. And that was,
Historic Preservation Office,
oh, that, I think that's where they,
the what?
State Historic Preservation Office.
Okay,
okay, I think that's where we were just.
okay, that's what
referencing.
it's, okay.
That's what we were just referencing.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Too many acronyms, not
Yeah.
enough time.
Yeah, just trying to write it all down. Jamie is going to follow up again with NACO and US Treasury in regards to private buildings. Because again, everything that we see refers to public, with the exception of housing. And the last NACO information that we received that said, you might want to hold off on this till we get final rule that may or may not provide more guidance. And I just kind of clearly articulated to Jamie that, you know, I've asked like 2 or 3 times.
And you always
NACO's
get-
responded. They keep coming back with public, so like come back and say, ask about private, and they come back with public again.
Meaning they don't know.
Right, yeah. So they're gonna try to get more, now, was there anything else that he was going to get more clarity on for us?
No.
That was mainly it.
Yeah, I, that's the main one at this point in time for,
Yeah, so then it comes into the risk factor that if we want to move that way, what risks does the county want to take
Mhm.
in regards to funding that?
Do they have any construction, Scott County have any construction projects, or are they sub-allocating funds to any nonprofits for multi-year projects?
Well, I'm not sure if they're doing multi-year. I mean, I know they were doing the public one. I know he said they were gonna do some for nonprofits as well, but I don't know if it was.
yeah, they have a housing project one
Yeah.
going on that's for housing, shelter, purchase affordable housing, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, I don't know if it's a nonprofit or a for-profit that's doing it.
Right,
But yes, they do have some shelter housing going on.
yeah, and we did specifically ask about like a campus, you know, of funding with the land acquisition and how that would be, and that's where we ended up with the responses that we did receive. He said that once he gets additional information back, or if we generated any additional questions, to send it to him, he will then pull, separate from the ARPA group that we are on with ISAC, they'll pull Lisa and I and David and Jamie back together for some more information. But I don't anticipate that information until sometime after the holidays.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you're not gonna get into,
Well,
I don't know that we'd have it, we have, I think, our next ISAC ARPA meeting like January 11th or
yeah, I want to say
mid-January, something like
it's
that.
during our budget work sessions, because it happened to be an afternoon that we didn't have anything scheduled. so-
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
I would be interested to learn more about what Scott County's affordable housing.
I can email David
Project
and
is.
find out what else they're doing,
Yeah,
what else they're looking at.
yeah, but they got 33 million. I think he said.
Yeah. We also asked about
the theater here in town, the housing up above. Again, he said, or when they talked about is, did the negative impact occur after March 3rd of 2021? Yeah.
That's an interesting little, that,
Yeah.
that whole application is really interesting because really they're asking for remodeling for the apartments.
Right.
They're asking for remodeling for the apartments because they closed it down because of the pandemic. And so now they're wanting to repurpose it basically, I think, or remodel it.
I think they're starting shows in January.
They have, well,
I think
they've done some shows since the pandemic.
Yeah, so then the question came up as the negative impact.
Right.
Yes, they were negatively impacted, they just shut down their shows or probably not. It was a little confusing on what.
And it's messy. That one's
Yeah,
messy, I
It
think.
is, it is.
I mean, I think it's a comedy of errors on that one. Not a comedy of errors. I don't want it to sound that way. It is, this happened, this happened, this happened, and now we need to look at how can we bring this back to being a tourist hospitality
Right.
type thing. Oh, and we need to fix up the apartments upstairs too. It's
Right.
very mixed.
It's kind of fitting around, taking the scoreboard.
Well, it kinda,
It's kind of taking a square peg and breaking it into 3 round pegs.
right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I
We did an analogy
totally
of
I totally and entirely get that the pandemic shut them down and they had
Yes.
they had an economic hit. I totally get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we talked about this.
We've already
We did.
taken it off.
We did.
Yeah,
but
when we
just
did it,
asked about
there's too many
variables with it.
variables with it, and you can't, if we're just trying to justify it this much to fit, then maybe we shouldn't try to fit it.
Right, right. And we did say today, or I said that the coding was very helpful to see where it fit in, made it
Right.
easier to justify. And
Right.
yeah, if we're having that hard of a time
Right.
to figure out where it would fit to justify to put the county in that particular thing. He did also agree that the confusion over obligated and incurred. David said the same thing, but he's going by what they initially said, obligated, as long as you have contracts, timeline, everything in place, that it is all signed, that it is incurred by 2024. Because you just gotta make sure that everything gets expended, because you don't want to have to send that money back. And
Well, and
he
he
even
brought,
kind of threw out the idea of over obligating
yeah,
to where you could say, well, you could put in some general funds in if you over obligated, because otherwise, if you under, or
You
if
can't
somebody- if they can't do it, then you're sending, you can't reallocate, you
you
can't.
can't re-incur, re-obligate, so.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
let's
yeah.
look at,
Okay.
Zeering is a really good example if we want to talk about the Zeering project. So Zeering comes to us after the engineering and says, okay, we can do this for 1.6. Okay, so we obligate, incur, whatever, by 12/24, 12/24, $1.6 million. Then they have 2 years to spend that, but they're a year and a half into it and they say, oh, wait, we're gonna need another, that somebody undercosted it really bad, so we're gonna need another 500,000. You can't go back and incur, or you can't go back and obligate another 500,000 because you've already obligated everything.
Right.
Unless you're
or-
taking general funds.
Right,
Right.
right.
Or under your examples, if they would count, you've obligated 1.5 million, and they come back and say, we only need to expend $1 million.
Right,
We were able to get some other funding,
Right,
whatever.
right.
You got 500,000.
500,000 that can't
That
be,
goes back to the feds. You
because it can't be
You cannot
reallocated because we're
We
done
cannot reallocate anything that they can't spend
After
Their initial-
2024.
after 12/24.
after, okay.
So
after
you have to
12.
obligate the funds by 12/24.
Okay, so
So
then.
then you get another year down the road and you find out that they're not gonna use all those funds.
They go
There's
back.
nothing you can do with those.
So is that a reason to hold back some funds now, not to put all the 18 million out there now? Because let's say in 2023, let's say, it's here as an example. Let's say we want to do the engineering first. Well, that's an easy one because we don't know what we would obligate. But it might be that somebody comes up with more. Is it? I can't think of a good illustrated example of this. But what I would like to see us do is wholesome, not start allocating money, but not allocate all of it. Maybe maybe just use we've got 9 million now in the bank. Let's look at the 9 million.
See, I don't see a point to doing any of that.
You know,
I do not.
Yeah.
And convince me, I don't know,
I'm trying to.
but I do not understand why you would not just go ahead and say, these are the projects we want to do, we're going to move forward with them. Right now, we have 2 years to determine whether they're viable in order to obligate them anyway. If one of these comes up and says, oh, this isn't going to work, we're not going to use this, we have until 12/24 to say, okay, well, we're going to assign these funds somewhere else then. But I don't see a reason to hold back
'Cause I
any
think-
dollars.
I think you're gonna end up, you could be in my concern is we're gonna be in a greater situation of sending back a larger amount of
Yeah.
money because we waited too long.
Yeah, right.
I think one of the reasons to hold some back, and I'm not saying hold back even close to 2024, there are a few years in between there that you can, put the deadline. But we just had an email from Public Health saying that they need to request funding, they depleted their funding for COVID positive homeless individuals. And they want to request funds. And that to me sounds like something that could very well fit under ARPA, but they didn't submit an application or anything like that, but that's public health, that's Story County Public Health. So that's basically Story County finding something that has popped up that it can use ARPA dollars for, but if all the ARPA dollars are used already or promised already, things like that pop up during, a still raging pandemic, we won't have those ARPA funds. to
Well,
move forward.
we also might identify here too, because we've already identified some internal ones that we didn't feel were eligible, and ones that came to what, 3.3 million or 3.4.
3.5 or something like that.
We've identified some external ones. There may be some additional external ones that are not eligible, and then determining what you're gonna fund at what level, I think is gonna, we
Mhm,
might say we're not gonna fund all of these at
100%,
100%. You're gonna end up having money
right,
I think
left
we're gonna
over.
have- I think we're gonna have some money left over. I don't think we're gonna have to try.
right.
But, and I'm not saying wait till November of 2024, because that's way too late. What I'm suggesting is we maybe do it now. We go through, we say, these are the ones we definitely want to fund. Do that, get those in process, take a break. We got a budget to do, for heaven's sake. We're not, I think it's just gonna be extremely, get the budget done, come back to ARPA at that point. And see if anything more has come up, because we may have some questions still out there. It may be if Xeron gets their engineering done, we know that there's something more that we can fund that would get done could be committed by 24 and done by 26. We don't know that now. So I almost feel like saying, until we get the list of what we really want to do now, we don't know what the strategy will be for the rest of it, but I do
And
think.
I guess that's where I'm at with the holding back. I'm just like, I don't know why you would hold back when what you're so far moving forward doesn't meet, it isn't 18 million anyway. So I don't know why we would hold back money at this point in time. Because by natural progression, whatever you determine on the rest of them, that you're gonna move forward on, there will be some dollars left. I think.
Here's something else that just recently came up, and we haven't made a decision about this particular application, but there may be something in a meeting, a future meeting that comes up with the asset that might have a bearing on this application, and it's the bridge home. I just got an email just before I came in here that they're trying to set up a meeting with the asset admin team to talk about the new campus. And so that could provide some new information on these applications, but the meeting may not occur until second week or so in January.
Right.
So, that might be a reason to pause at least that application till you hear.
Sure.
maybe.
Right.
And sometimes the information that asset gets is different from what's in these other
Sure.
applications.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I mean, look at it, we've got all of calendar 22, 23, and 24 to allocate funds. We are still in the midst of the pandemic. We don't know what that's going to bring. There's still a lot of uncertainty. We still don't know what's going to happen with a whole bunch of federal things right now. I just think, I'm trying to get a handle on how we move forward right now, and I think we're just going to have to say that our next move should just be, we all look at this, and we all come with a list and say, this is, go through the external applications, say, this is what I'd like to do, and here's why, and then just talk it through, get some numbers and see where we are, and then we can determine a strategy. But we're gonna have to dive into that pool real soon.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree that we're gonna need to do that. I know the other thing that our subgroup has brought up before too is somebody to kind of manage all of these grants, and taking kind of a look at that. It's just from all the information that we keep getting, it's gonna be pretty exhaustive monitoring. I mean, I don't know that it needs to be a full-time person. We've talked about this contracting or whatever, but I think they're gonna have to stay on top to making sure the things that they're following through, and that we also have a heads up before December of 2024. If it looks like if we've allocated funds and they're not going to be able to use them, where we could potentially reallocate those funds, or we're going to be sending them back to DC.
I did bring some information about that position if you wanted. I didn't do a deep dive or any analysis like I wanted to, but I did bring copies for everybody so that you can go through it and, look at the areas that look good to you, and then maybe we can come together and do like a position statement or something like that, and then maybe I could work with HR to come up with a job description or something.
Are we gonna do a job or we
You can do a job or you can do a
doing
contract.
Or
Contract.
contract.
Job description
Yeah.
for the contract.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Kind of what our expectations would be.
Yeah.
but to know what those
What the
deliverables are.
deliverables
Yeah.
should
Yes,
be.
what the
Yeah.
deliverable- yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you want me to pass that out now?
Sure, I mean, I think it'd be something for us to look at.
That might be one. We also have a little bit different items.
It looks like you've got some different locations.
Yeah, different locations, titles, responsibilities. Some here from consulting firms. I did put in a call to Johnson County to see if I could get their job description, see what those responsibilities are.
Yeah, for the grant writer, the grant. We have some job descriptions.
Oh, you have one
We have,
for ARPA?
they're doing it internally, whenever I found out. So I found out Johnson County hired, Bolton and Maine just with public outreach component. Not just ongoing program management, but doing that internally. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's great, again. Great foresight, special projects coordinator for Johnson County.
So when you say outreach, what do you mean by the outreach?
They did before they did a series of public outreach events to receive input.
Oh, okay. Okay,
And so Bolton and they designed that outreach component.
gotcha.
So they're done.
Gotcha.
You said something about OPM. Oh, no, you said OPM did something.
To reach out to special projects.
I'm just looking at, I have, their job descriptions are all online,
Oh,
Well,
Johnson County is, but
that research,
I didn't see.
we keep saying that too. Position. We both should have that.
So it looks like these are all actual staff positions. Some of them are.
Some of them are from consulting firms. So I'm thinking that maybe the consulting firm was hired in there for somebody to manage the process. But what I was thinking that even the ones that are employees, we could still look at what are those responsibilities? What should somebody be doing?
Right. I agree with that. Maybe I'm feeling kind of like consultants, and I'm looking at studies that we've done recently. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Would we have more control if we just hired somebody?
No, I don't,
You don't think so?
no, I don't think so. I think this is different than hiring a consultant.
I hope so.
I think,
this isn't giving them,
This would be like a project manager consultant.
Yeah,
is what we're.
it's not like giving them free rein to go and bring you something, it's,
right.
you've got
It's pretty-
deliverables,
here's
or
the
it's
job,
pretty
here's the
specific,
job, do the
Right.
job.
but,
Yeah.
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 Nothing ARPA, they have a grants coordinator and a grants assistant.
Somebody they already have.
I wonder if they've got 2 grant positions at Johnson County.
So I guess the question is next steps. I know we've got our meeting set for January 4th. Do we want to look further? I mean, all of us look further at this information that Sandra has provided. And do we want to, I'm just trying to figure out if we want to get some direction to Sandra or Alyssa to look up further to talk about at the next meeting, to then maybe have something on the board agenda. Where are we kind of at?
I'm just thinking that we're at the draft stage, basically.
Right.
You can look at this and then send, back to me, and I can put something together to come back to talk about it.
Okay.
And then after that, get with HR to fine tune it. Dot the i's, cross the t's, and bring it forward, something like
Okay.
that. is what I
Yeah, just be
envision.
working towards an announcement that we would be looking to contract.
if we just send all of our thoughts, Sandra, then she can pull something together rather than us coming back and sharing our thoughts in a meeting and then pulling something together and then talking about it again. Like.
Try to shortcut it. Yeah.
And I appreciate you pulling all this information so that we can look through and see what are each doing and what do we think needs to be in.
What if an individual were to reply rather than a consulting?
They
firm?
can. It's like, it's
We
a
could-
contract.
We could put them on contract. That
Sure.
was my question.
Sure.
Okay.
You're gonna have a
So we
contract,
would
whether
be
it's a
open
company
to
or,
a contract with an individual or a contract with a firm.
it's a contract position versus.
Contract position
and-
versus a.
And a firm can respond.
Yeah.
To the contract, to
Or an
the
individual.
posting for the contract or whatever, or an individual. We've done both.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
We have a position like that, the asset admin assistant is a contract position. So not an employee of either fund.
Both alternatives coordinators are. Our contract.
Okay, good. So I think, yes, I think it's good suggestion. If we just look at this pretty quickly and make it the first thing on our agenda, our list, so we can get some information, Sandra, our thoughts about anything in here that's good, not good, whatever. And when we come back on the 4th, we came with a list on the externals. We each did a list and talked about what we thought about them and maybe even had numbers in mind. And get moving on down the list.
How much of, so this is just me trying to figure out how things work. How much of that conversation happens in a work session and how much of that has to happen in a board meeting?
The formal approval has to happen in a board meeting.
But we can talk about all the rest of it in a work session.
Yes.
And I would suggest that we try to do it somehow by topics and not the topics of, because I think we kind of group them together. Let's say we talk about the water and the wastewater together. That makes more sense and it's easier conversation, easier decision-making process than just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and going all around the board. You know what I mean? And if you've got your mind focused on wastewater, you should just do them all at one time rather than subject to subject. Would make sense to me.
I'm open to whatever.
Yeah.
We have to look back at our other things to see where we were with A, B, C, D, and E. How we categorize them, but yeah. we can do that.
Right.
Anything else for today?
I did send an email around for number 13. Did anybody want to talk about that? Number 13 was YSS's rapid rehousing. We answered the questions and I just provided, when I sent the email, when I forwarded the email, I just noted that, you know, they have requested rapid rehousing funding through asset, but it's not something that I'm going to recommend to the volunteers to fund because it's not something that the county has historically funded rent utilities. Not historically funded by the county through asset.
That was 13, right? Yes. 13.
Yes.
Okay.
Patrick Bateman, right?
No. That's the
No, that's the
ICS.
That's the. Yeah.
What's
the name?
ARPA application YSS Story County.
It came at about 12:34.
Oh, Sanders from you.
Yeah.
Okay. So if he's asking for the difference in ARPA request, funding,
No, the amount is,
saying on asset request staff cost per youth is 6,000 and ARPA request is 7,035.
Right.
He's saying that the asset request doesn't do everything. It's not 100% funding of some of these line items, so I'm asking for the difference in ARPA funds from the county. Is that what he's saying?
well,
That may be what he is, but I think what Sandra is saying is asset has not generally funded rent and utilities, so she would be recommending to the volunteers not,
The county hasn't funded.
right, to
Yes.
not fund that at all. So it essentially be their application asking for 100% ARPA if they don't get funding through asset would be my, or at least a portion of it. I mean,
right, and they don't necessarily know that, well, they should know because we've said that in asset that, you know, the county doesn't fund rent and utilities, but they requested that 52,000 just from the county anyway. And they were advised when they brought that forward initially as a new program that the whole 52,000 was not going to be coming from asset. So when they heard that, I think they just decided to request the whole 52,000 from one funder, and that one funder is Story County. But because Story County can't fund it, that's not going to be, they're not going to get that funding that they thought they were going to get. But that was for 3 individuals. Their ARPA application is to cover, I believe it's 10 individuals a year.
So 50
Yeah.
total from funding.
50 total units. And the reason I asked this final question is because based on the asset application, same type of program and everything, funding through youth, it looked like that individual amount was lower than what they had included in their ARPA application. So that's what he's doing here, is showing why that's different.
okay.
IHYC. IHYC stand for. Under his, in his signature block.
I reuse something.
Iowa Youth Recovery House, is that right? Or Iowa Youth Recovery Coordinator?
IHY,
Oh, IHY.
a YSS organization. That's underneath it.
They're in Des Moines. He's in Des Moines.
Yeah, I know that. That's his address, but I'm just.
Oh,
wondering-
is it Iowa Homeless Youth?
Yeah, I think so.
It's Iowa Homeless Youth. I'm not sure what the C stands for, coordinator.
That's a separate organization.
I think it's a branch of YSS. Isn't it?
I don't know what's for some, I've ever seen that signature block and seen those, that acronym.
On the website. It'll come up.
So.
It says YSS, so when it comes up, Iowa Homeless Youth Centers, Des Moines. And it has YSS. So is this for youth in Ames?
Well,
the
Story
question
County,
said
it was
it's
Story
for Story
County.
County.
It's
For
Story
Story
County.
It's for Story County, but
So I guess my question, my follow-up question to them would be, they're saying the asset request is to backfill funding for the 3 units they already have. So if they're not getting any of the asset funding they're asking for, what is that? What the impact is that going to have on the program? If we were to fund this request 100% through ARPA, can they?
it wouldn't be 100%.
Because they didn't ask for 100%. If they,
I mean, if we were to fund 100% of their ask, but they're not getting their any asset funds for those three that they're wanting to backfill with asset funds.
How does that affect their original program without the additional 50 that they want?
Right.
Is what you're saying. Okay.
But the numbers he's got in here were sure are just the Story County ask.
Right. Right, but I saw that too. Yeah.
They're gonna be, they'll be short the 6,000 per youth, the 7,800 per youth,
How far back are they backfilling?
and whatever, and
I mean, I guess the date would be how, what are they backfilling? Which, I mean, right?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, if, I know they're asking for asset funds, but if we're asking the question, if they've got, they were gonna backfill funds for 3 units. And then they were gonna do 50 with ARPA funds. So if I understood Latifa, your question is, okay, if you don't get asset funding for those 3 units, what happens to your program? Because you can't fund those 3 units, but you're asking for ARPA funding for 50. Would they be looking at using some of those ARPA dollars to backfill those 3 units? And how far back are they looking?
How far back are they?
Are they
Yeah,
looking at?
exactly.
I don't know, and they don't know, they're not getting that asset dollars, so they didn't.
Well, yeah, they would know that till that end of February or whatever. That's just gonna be your recommendation, right? Who knows what may come out of that, but I just thought that would be your recommendation on that. So I think the question would be, if you don't receive asset funding, what happens to those 3 units?
Units.
Would you be looking at using ARPA dollars to backfill, which would lessen the amount of, like the 50 additional, down to 47 would be my assumption. And how far back would you be? What when you say backfill, what does that
What
mean?
does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, if they don't get the asset amount or don't get the level of asset requested.
So if you don't receive the requested asset funding, what happens to the 3 units? And what was that middle part there that you said?
Well,
Was it 3 units?
Yeah, the 3
What's the
units,
impact on the program?
what's the program impact? And
what
with
do you mean by
the-
backfilling?
Yeah, and if they were to receive ARPA funding, would they be looking to use ARPA funding? Would that reduce the 50 additional homeless youth? Would they be using some of the ARPA funding to address those 3 units to backfill, and how far
Back.
back are they looking at backfilling?
I may need somebody to help me wordsmith that one.
Yeah.
But why?
Send it to me when you got it. I know what I have in my mind. Right.
If you're serving 3 people now, but you're a little short on money, you want to serve 10 more for a 5-year period. If you don't get the asset money, just net, what are you going to be able to do? You can move these numbers around and say, if we don't get the asset money, we get the ARPA money, we can do this.
Yeah, I think we just need to make sure that they're not covering expenses from before March of this year.
Right.
Like, what are you backfilling? My gosh, what does that mean even?
Right, and I guess the 50 additional youth was
the number for over 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be just the
10
year, yeah.
Right,
So it may be that they're able to continue to support the 3 they have with the ARPA money. And then an additional 7. Or 8 because it's more expensive. What they're proposing is a little more per youth than what they have right now. So maybe they are able to do an
Do we know
additional
when their
8,
federal
but
funding
they back them.
expires? Do we know when their federal funding expires?
I think you can include it in your application. I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't remember either.
Their federal funding when does it expire?
Which number were they?
13.
Thank you.
I didn't bring my glasses, so I'm not going to find it quickly. So sorry about that.
Yeah, I can look too, and then
Looks like it ends December 2021. So it's about to end. That's
That's
our
now.
54,575 are to backfill our ESG COVID CARES dollars that end December of 2021 and will allow us to continue to serve 3 homeless youth in rapid housing units in Story County.
they backfill COVID CARES dollars.
It's not, I don't think it's backfilling. I think they're ending in December in order to get it to cover until they can get other funding. Don't you think that's what they
That's what
mean?
it
I don't,
sounds like.
I don't think they
It
mean
sounds
we're
like
going
it.
back and,
no, that's not how I'm
I
hearing
just
that.
think-
I think it means
Backfill,
replace.
that's-
Replace,
That's what it sounds
I think they need to replace it after the
because it ends.
CARES
Yeah.
dollars end.
Replacing it, why do you go through all that detail about the difference between what we're getting and what it really costs?
No, because I think they're hoping to get additional funding for the 3 that they have, different funding, but between if and when they're able to get additional funding, that's what I'm understanding. They are gonna have a few months potentially with no funding. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
that's,
know.
maybe that's a
I'm
clarifying,
guessing.
clarifying question is, that your funding, it appears your funding ends December, the end of this month. Is this to fill a gap until you have identify other funding, or?
Or is this, are they saying it ends December?
They're trying to get funds to it. I mean, it's what they
Right.
say. They're looking for what justice funds and
Mhm.
different things. So I think it's a gap. I think it's more of a gap measure. I could be wrong.
So they're doing
But
other
it's
things.
gap
and
measure
they
for 5 years, that's the question, that's the question, so the gap, or are they saying? Yeah, 'cause they're asking for funding for 5 years.
No, the asset funds are to backfill.
I'm gonna just have to reread this one.
Yeah, I think
just-
we're, we need to-
Yeah,
It's confusing, and I'm not sure backfill was the right word, as
Yeah,
Lisa was
right.
saying.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like they're talking about this funding ends. You know, we want the asset dollars to pick up where it left off. That's what it sounded.
Until we get additional funding from
With the
some other
asset
source.
dollars, yeah.
I think,
so,
I don't know.
all right. Any other questions anyone has yet for today, or we kind of set, at least for now, for our January 4th meeting? At least the starting spot for our January 4th meeting is we'll review these project manager consultant type things. Pass that on to Sandra. We'll look over applications and kind of look at each of us having a list of what we're kind of looking at that
One
particular.
person volunteered to do a grouping that we could use
To group it. Do
to group them.
you have a group, the one we did it before, or? I'd have to look to see if I have my,
Spreadsheet at home.
yeah, I have to look.
Do you just want, like, here's the numbers for all the water projects?
Well, how we did it, yes, I think before we were like, this is A, this is, we can try to group them all together when we.
I can do that. You just want a list?
I was gonna do it.
Oh, you can
I
do
was gonna
it.
volunteer to do it.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. I thought you were looking for somebody to do it.
No, I just wanted to know if we thought it would be useful, if it was gonna be useful, I'd do it.
Okay.
Gotcha, I'm sorry, I
Okay,
misunderstood
that's
you.
all right.
So we have our group together. Anything else for today? We've got the public comment now, that we have no public that's on Zoom. Yeah, here, unless any of you have anything additional you'd like to say. Are we okay to adjourn for today? All right, we're adjourning.